This is Sir Siege, and this is the third episode of Developmental Reading. Remember that this is based on the book that was written by Araceli M. Villamin, Evelyn S. Salazar, and Wilhelmina Gatmaitan. Yan, so let's dive into the third episode. Alright, remember that we're still in the first chapter that is titled The Nature and Psychology of Reading. Now, in this DR, what we'll be focusing on are the followings. The first one, eye movements. So the psychology of reading. Reading as a process, reading as a way of communicating, reading as one of the macro skills that we have in communication is actually also bound to psychology. We actually talked about this aspect of reading in the previous episodes, right? And now we're formally talking about it in details. We're going to have a more than just kumbaga, a shallow definition of it, how reading becomes something psychological. It starts with eye movements. Medyo meron din siyang pagka-physiological. Now, reading, if not always, if not like all the time, it most of the time, requires the use of the eyes. Meron kasi mga methods of reading naman, 'di ba, na hindi naman talaga nangangailangan ng mga mata, like say braille system, right? What they're doing there is reading basically, but it doesn't really use the eye. Pero for most of us, our usual way of reading is through the eyes. Now, studies on eye movements show that the eyes should move rhythmically and regularly along the printed line if reading is to be effective. Our eyes must have this particular kind of rhythm. Kumbaga yung pinaka keyword natin dyan. Hindi pwede na parang napaka-aimless, napaka-random, no, ng movements ng mga mata natin when we're reading. It needs to have rhythm for the process of reading to be effective. However, the eyes perceive the words during a series of pauses or fixations. Hindi naman tayo nagbabasa kapag we're just moving our eyes. It's not really reading. We read when we actually pause. Okay, now when the eyes stop or pause at any given point along a line of print, only around 5 letters immediately around the fixation point are seen with 100% accuracy. So what does this say is that when you're reading a line, and then halimbawa we come across, we actually get through a line of words, yung mga words na nandun dun sa line na yun, okay, so the words that make up that particular sentence, we're not actually like scrutinizing them letter by letter. What we're actually doing is that we put our gaze temporarily on a particular letter or around 5 letters, and then yung mga nasa bandang sides niya are included. That's what we do. Okay, so we're not really going through each word letter by letter. What we're doing is we are actually having this focal point, yung fixation point na sinasabi dyan, which is around 5 letters. Ayan. Now, beyond that, words and their letters are seen with a decreasing amount of clarity. So, yung mga letters that are surrounding pa, like beyond those 5 letters, medyo di na sila malinaw sa atin. That's why we glide through that line. Now, vision is reduced while the eyes are in motion. It's like we're just seeing, kumbaga, we're seeing blur, right? When your eyes are constantly in motion, you don't really see words, you don't really read them, you don't have any fixation point. But when we pause, that is when we actually read. Now, when we pause, what you have to remember is doon nangyayari yung process of recognition, which is mostly, if we're gonna review it, it's actually the very, very first step in the procedure that is reading, right? So, recognition muna. However, it's going to be really difficult to recognize words when the eyes are in constant motion. Ayan, photographs show that reading involves these eye movements. So, halimbawa, fixation, that's the first one, we're stopping. Interfixation, and then return sweeps and aggression. Now, let's define those terms. I think for fixation, medyo malinaw na rin naman na that these are stops. Pero what kind of stops are they? They're much like a vertical mark. We're following a vertical mark, tapos doon magi-stop yung mga eyes natin temporarily, and then yung nga, magka-count na tayo ng mga 5 letters surrounding that particular fixation point. Ayan, now when we stop, yung brain natin, which acts like the film, continues to move. Ang mga napakagaling ng mga readers, yung mga sanay na sa pagbabasa, they actually have fewer fixation point than poor readers. Mga poor readers kasi talaga, ang dami nilang mga fixation points kasi syempre, most of what they see siguro are unfamiliar. They don't really have any prior knowledge to use, any stock knowledge to activate. Yan. And then interfixation naman, fixation is the vertical mark. Yung naman interfixation is like a horizontal line. So if you imagine this, parang merong horizontal line that is striking through the letters. Tapos yung vertical mark na isa is a shorter one that is just at the height of the letters. Tapos parang nagfi-fixation lang siya. Alam mo yun, parang it's just randomly moving through each word. Pero yung horizontal line is actually there. Kumbaga, it doesn't move. The lines are being struck through by interfixation points. Ayan. Yung return sweeps naman is when we finish a line and then we go to the beginning of the next line. So, as a Filipino, as a person na yung language niya is Filipino, and yung secondary language ko naman is English, and even my dialect actually Kapampangan, ang mga languages na kumbaga naipamana sa akin, talaga nagbabasa from left to right. Okay, so start ka sa may bandang left, tapos mag-end kang right. Just like what we're doing here right now. In other cultures kasi di naman ganun. May mga nagbabasa yata ng from top to bottom, right to left, ganun sila, diba? Now, return sweeps is when kapag binasa ko yung line, halimbawa, dito sa sa presentation na to, kapag binasa ko yung word na eye movements, dun sa after ng S, ang return sweep ko is going to be towards fixation. Tapos from fixation, magbabasa ako hanggang sa makarating ako sa word na have. Tapos ang return sweep ko is dun sa fewer because that's the first word in the next line. So when you're doing that, when you're moving from the last word from the previous line to the first word dun sa next line, that action is actually called a return sweep. Now, what is a regression? A regression is a backward or a right to left movement. In my case, pero again, although in the book hindi to siguro dito na consider, pero halimbawa dun sa isang culture, yung sa isang language, yung pagsusulat nila is parang top to bottom, ganun. Tapos ang pagbabasa is talagang naka-column sila. Then, it's much like regression is from parang bottom up. No, parang ganun. Now, why do we do that? Why are we going backwards? Usually, we do it as a force of habit na lang. Sometimes naman, to double check a point. Ako, I do that. When I'm not sure kung parang ganun. Lalo na kapag medyo lutang ka, no? Puyat ka na sa kakabasa. O kaya parang biglang nag-drift, parang nag-zone out ka ng very light, no? Ayun, you do a regressive swipe. So you're just gonna be double checking a point, so you're going to be reading a bit backwards. So you're gonna be going back. It's different from a return sweep. Kasi yung return sweep, it's going towards the next line. Pero ang regression is within the line lang. Now, let us not pin this to be something na ang mga poor readers lang ang gumagawa. Although poor readers are very much prone sa mga regressions kasi syempre they need to sometimes open a dictionary to actually siguro review a word kung ibig sabihin niya, expand their vocabulary. Pero this also happens among good readers. Ayan. Yun nga lang, mas konti sa mga good readers, yung mga regressions nila. Kasi maybe mas wide na yung vocabulary nila, mas marami ng familiar situations sa kanila. Now, the following terms are things that you should be also considering. Yung span of recognition or yung perception span. Ito yung number of words that's taken every time the eyes stop. Yes, meron tayong mga ganun. It is synonymous with the length or distance recognized within one fixation. Sometimes when we look at a string of words, we only really notice words, like sometimes 3 at a time, no? Or depending on the length of the word. Pero parang siguro 20 letters, that's what you can process, right? And then as you read, kumbaga, I mean, the more you read, the more the wider the perception span is. Right? When you start reading kasi, parang per word no? Per word lang yung nare-recognize mo. Pero when you're proficient na in reading, you're just taking a swipe and you know the next word sometimes. Like even without turning the page, right? You already know what the next word is. Ayan. So that is it. Yung perception of number of words. Ayan, that is called perception span. Ang duration of fixation naman is the length of time para mag-pause yung mga mata natin. Marami sa mga readers daw, ang nangyayari is they have around 4 eye stops. Sometimes siguro marami pa dyan. But poor readers have more time and require more time to pause in order to see accurately. Kumbaga, a person who makes fewer fixations has a longer duration. Actually, in the book, hindi sa akin medyo malinaw yan. Pero feeling ko, ang ibig lang niyang sabihin is yung mismong time required para mag-pause ka. Hindi yung haba nung pause ha. Magkaiba yun. The amount of time that a reader needs to pause and focus, that is the duration of fixation. That's what I think it means. And the longer it is, the longer time it requires for a particular reader to pause, maybe the poor their reading habits are. Ayan. Now, to proceed, many teachers believe that readers can accelerate reading growth by widening the span of recognition through phrase reading or chunking. Now, as the span widens, the number of fixations decrease, resulting in increased reading rate. As we go ahead and read more and more and more, what we're reading is not actually the words na lang. We're actually reading the ideas. How does that feel? Like when you're reading On the Hilltop, you don't actually read it as 3 words. You don't actually imagine it as like that. You immediately see the hill, and then you immediately imagine something that is on top of it, right? So when it says when there is an idiomatic expression, when we're talking about when the text is describing a wound, when the text is describing a war, when the text is describing a romantic gesture, you don't actually see the words like as they are, like just plain words. What you see, what you read, are the ideas that they actually evoke. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. One more, I think, for eye movements. What we have to remember as students of developmental reading, is that reading begins with recognition, and that reading becomes faster, and reading has a particular process. Yung sinabi nga natin about fixations, hyperfixations, return sweeps, about regressions. There are also concepts like span of recognition and the duration of the fixation. But even as people, or maybe as teachers in this case, if we're like trying to, even actually, tayo, if we're trying to teach, if we are about to teach young ones, like mga pupils ganun, and pupils who are really really young, understanding the way they begin reading is somewhat going to also explain why grown-ups read the way they do. For kasi, for 7-year-olds or 6-year-olds, they find it hard to focus on a book. Like, you lay a book and then you ask them to read it. It's quite difficult for them because they have hyperopia or farsightedness. Lahat ng mga bata from birth at some time thereafter are normally farsighted. So, what they need is not a book. They need a blackboard, they need a chart. Ayan, before book reading is even attempted. Habang tumatagal noon, nagmamature na yung mga yung mga mata nila, and nako-correct na yung kanilang farsightedness, and mas nagiging maganda na rin yung kanilang eye coordination. That's why when they're already 9 years old, you can actually have them get a book and read. Maybe if they're really young, like 8 pa lang, pero they seem like they're showing interest in book reading, you can give them siguro a book that has a bigger text so that they can read it even though naka-extend yung mga arms nila. Now, apart from the eye movements, what we'll be talking about is sensation and perception. Ang pinaka-basic na stage of reading revolves around the ability of a person, of a reader, to recognize words. Because yung mga words talaga are like small keys. They are the small keys na kapag alam mo silang gamitin, you can decode you can actually code information. Ayan. Their smallest unit of visual identification and meaningful recognition. Pero what I would like you to remember is that they words evoke a particular kind of meaning, of image, of feeling, ayan, of idea, of concept. That's why I also challenge myself this Wag tayo gaanong tamarin sa paghahanap ng mga meanings ng mga words, okay? Because the ability to recognize words is actually a power. And the more words you are able to identify, the more words you can actually use yourself. So that's actually literally power. While it is true though na when we recognize letters and words, sometimes they don't convey meanings. Now, how can the reading act take place? How can the reading act take place if the letters are identified in isolation? Now, what we'll be doing in the next parts of this discussion is we'll be looking at how the eyes literally and biologically process information. So I want you to pause this video and read it. Alright, now if you're through, let us now proceed. The eyes are capable of processing light energy, and everything around us actually makes sense through the eyes because of light energy. That's what I want you to remember first. So if it's a printed information, wait lang na. Ayan. If it's a printed information, you require light to see it, to make sense of it. And that particular light is what is going to be processed. Yung nagre-reflect na light sa mga mata natin, yun yung mapaprocess ng mga brains natin in that particular manner. Now, when the word is familiar for our brain, ang gagawin ng mga ng mga utak natin is they will trace some relationship to it. You know what I mean? Parang, okay, kasi yan, like say for instance, being pressured to put down your pride, Halimbawa, you were reading about that. Like a character is being conflicted kasi kailangan niyang i-lay down yung pride niya sa isang situation. Now, your mind can only relate to that actually if you yourself have already experienced that. Now, your past experiences are going to be aroused and they will be associated with traces of the spoken or the heard word or the yung read na word mo. Now, each association between symbols and concepts enables the reader to perceive the word. Only then, and only then actually, can you actually say that you have related to the word or you have related to those string of words, to that string of words. Only when one is clearly aware of the spoken and heard equivalent of its concept of meaning does perception take place. Now, kung ganun siya, kung ganun yung pagbabasa pala is like a manner of of relating to a particular string of words, then what is reading? I mean, what is reading therefore in that particular definition? Reading, therefore, is a continuous cycle of excitation and reaction in which each moment of perception produces a feedback effect that sets the reading for the following perception. Okay, it's a continuous cycle of excitation and reaction. It's like stimulus and response. Okay, so let us always remember those two things. Okay, when a word or a string of words were recognized, we need to have some sort of an association to those string of words. All right, and now when we have an association to those strings of words, we react to it. Okay, we relate to it, and then that's the only moment we can say that we have actually perceived what was read. Now, in this connection, a person named Stanford E. Taylor in 1975 contends that readers actually react to the total word pattern. I think you can hear my young niece in the background, pero yeah, let's carry on. React to the total word pattern, although less consciously to familiar word parts. We don't really make a big deal out of the word parts, out of the etymology of a particular, although it's sometimes really interesting, right? When you're like reading halimbawa the word and it was quite unfamiliar, but you kind of like got it because it was in the context of this and that ganyan. You immediately relate to it. Now, what Stanford D. Taylor is just proposing here is a support to our standing understanding of what reading is and its psychology. He is suggesting that it is just a manner of sensation and perception of taking the word strings or string of words, the word itself sometimes if it's really meaningful, as a pattern. Ayan. And then the whole composition as a whole body of work. Ayan. Now, before we leave DR3 or Developmental Reading 3, the psychology of reading, we have the following checkpoints. So I hope that you have with you some sheet of paper to assess what you know about this so far. Let's begin with number 1. Studies show that the eyes should move blank and regularly along the printed line if reading is to be effective. What do you think is the answer to this question? I will reveal the answer now. The answer is rhythmically. Question number 2. When the eyes stop at any given point along a line of print, only blank letters immediately around it are seen with 100% sharpness. The answer to this question is actually a number. So what do you think is it? I will be revealing the answer, and the answer is 5. For number 3, very brief or short pauses between words are known as blank. Okay, what do you think is the answer to this? I'll be revealing the answer now. The answer is interfixations. For question number 4, the eyes perceive words only during a series of pauses or blank. I will be revealing the answer now. The answer is fixations. Number 5, the fast, accurate movement of the eyes from the end of one line to the beginning of another line are called blank. So, yung kanina yung parang from the last word of the previous line to the first word of the next line. I'll be revealing the answer now. The answer is return sweeps. Let's now jump to the last 5 items. With item number 6, the backward movement of the eyes to reread or double check a word or phrase is commonly known as blank. I will be revealing the answer now. The answer is regression. And remember that this not only happens sa mga poor readers, okay? It also happens sa mga good readers. Number 7, the number of words recognized within one pause or fixation is called blank. I'll be revealing the answer now. The answer is recognition span. Item number 8. Reading by phrases or meaningful units which improves speed and comprehension is known as blank. The correct answer for this is chunking. Hindi siya gaanong na-emphasize kanina pero nandun siya sa discuss natin, okay? For number 9, 6 and 7-year-olds, since 6 and 7-year-olds have blank or farsightedness, initial reading should begin with exercises on blackboard and charts, or maybe sa mga books na may mga malalaking mga texts, right? Or mga flashcards. Now, what do you think is the correct answer to this question? I'll be revealing the answer now. The answer is hyperopia or farsightedness. That's already in there. Now, for the last item, sensation and blank occur when the eyes see the printed symbols and send nerve currents to the brain for its reaction. What do you think is the correct answer to the last question? I will be revealing the answer. It's perception. Okay. Now, I think I said the answer kanina, pero you know. Alright, now let us now conclude. Thank you so much for joining me for Developmental Reading 3. This is, again, the psychology of reading. And I'm hoping that I will be seeing you in the next video lesson related to this subject. This is Sir CJ, and I'm hoping that you're having a good day so far.